Go play outside. That's what my mother said as she wiped her hands on a dishcloth, her voice calm but tired. I nodded. I always nodded. Okay, Mama. Outside, the sun was warm, and children were laughing somewhere down the street. I stood at the gate, holding it lightly, not sure if I actually wanted to play. I was 7 years old, but I already knew something other children didn't. Home had moods. Some days, the house felt light. Other days, it felt like everyone was holding their breath. That day, it was holding its breath. Inside, voices lowered. Not arguing, not shouting, just quiet tension. I could hear my aunt say, "Things are getting harder." And my mother replied, "We'll manage. We always do." That word, manage, stayed with me. I didn't know what it meant exactly, but I knew it meant not asking for too much. At school, my teacher smiled at me. "You're such a good child," she said. So quiet. So responsible. Responsible. I liked the praise, but it also made my chest feel tight, because I wasn't responsible by choice. I was responsible because someone had to be. My friend Nandi once asked me during break, "Why don't you ever get in trouble?" I shrugged. I don't like noise. That wasn't the real answer. The real answer was, I didn't want to add weight to a home that already felt heavy. At night, I shared a room with my younger cousin. She slept easily, breathing slow and deep. I stared at the ceiling. If I behave, if I stay quiet, if I don't need much, maybe everything will be okay. One evening, I heard my mother crying in the kitchen, softly, like she didn't want anyone to hear. I stood in the hallway, frozen. Should I go to her? Should I pretend I didn't hear? I chose silence, because children aren't supposed to fix adults. But somehow, I felt like I was supposed to. The next morning, she smiled like nothing happened. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. "Yes," I lied. She touched my cheek. "You're such a strong child." Strong. Another word that sounded like praise, but felt like responsibility. Family gatherings were loud. Laughter. Food. Stories. But even then, I watched faces more than I listened to jokes. I noticed when my uncle drank too much, when my aunt went quiet, when my mother forced a smile. Adults thought children didn't notice. We noticed everything. Once I asked my grandmother, "Does growing up hurt?" She looked at me strangely. "Why would you ask that?" I didn't answer. Because how do you explain that you already feel the ache before the age you're supposed to? By the time I turned 10, I knew how to comfort others. "Don't worry," I told my cousin when she cried. "It will be okay." I believed it for her, just not for myself. I didn't lose my childhood all at once. I gave it away slowly. One quiet moment at a time. One unasked question at a time. One swallowed feeling at a time. And no one noticed, because I was still smiling, still polite, still doing well. But inside, something was changing. Something was hardening. Something was growing older, before it was supposed to. And this was only the beginning. By 13, I had learned how to disappear without moving. At home, at school, among friends. I became a ghost in the middle of life. At school, Nandi sat beside me under the old mango tree during lunch. "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" she asked, poking at a leaf. I looked down at my hands. "Pretending?" "Yeah," she said, eyes serious for once. "Acting like everything is fine, smiling when you don't feel like it." I didn't answer. How could I? Because if I admitted the truth, I would have to explain too much. The nights I stayed awake listening to the house. The mornings I faked energy while swallowing exhaustion. The small weight of responsibility that rested on my chest like a brick. Home was heavier now. My mother's quiet sighs were louder than ever. One evening, my uncle shouted at my little cousin over spilled milk. "You ruined it," he bellowed. I froze in the hallway, small feet trembling. Why does everyone hurt each other? I whispered to no one. My mother's hand touched my shoulder. "It's life," she said softly, but her eyes betrayed 1,000 things she didn't say. I wanted to tell her, life shouldn't feel this heavy for a child, but the words got stuck in my throat. I started to drift toward the older kids. The ones who laughed too loudly, smoked behind the gym, and seemed untouchable. "Come on, you're missing all the fun," said Kwesi one day, tugging at my sleeve. I followed, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. I laughed when they laughed, even when the jokes were cruel or reckless. It felt good to belong. Until it didn't. Late one night, I walked home alone from a friend's house. The streetlights cast long shadows and I felt small. Why am I always searching for something I can't name? I wondered. When I reached the house, my mother was waiting at the door. "You're late," she said, her voice calm but heavy. I lost track of time," I mumbled. Her eyes searched mine. I knew she suspected the truth, but she let it go. Don't make it a habit. And just like that, I realized. I was alone in navigating the world. Friendships were confusing. Some betrayed me without realizing it. Secrets whispered behind my back. Laughter when I was not looking. Moments where I thought I could trust. And then betrayal. I learned how to mask the pain. Smile. Laugh. Shrug. Act like it didn't matter. But inside, the hurt grew. It settled like dust in my chest, quietly suffocating. At home, I noticed more than ever the cracks in our family. My younger sister, laughing carelessly, reminded me of innocence I no longer had. My cousin, angry and loud, reflected frustrations I couldn't express. My mother, exhausted and smiling through pain, was my anchor and my reminder that even grown-ups didn't have all the answers. One night, I overheard my mother talking on the phone. "Sometimes I feel like I'm failing them all," she whispered. I leaned against the doorframe, silent. Her words hit me harder than any punishment or argument ever could. I realized I wasn't alone in carrying weight. And yet, I was alone in how heavy it felt on my own shoulders. I began to write things down in secret. Notes hidden under my mattress. Thoughts I couldn't speak aloud. Questions I couldn't ask. Why do I feel so small in a world that expects me to be strong? Why do I hide my tears when I should be allowed to cry? Writing was the only place where the chaos of my mind could make sense. And even that felt temporary. Friendship tested me further. Nandi drifted away one summer, caught up in her own world. I don't know if I can handle your moods anymore," she said once, brushing past me. I wanted to yell, "You don't understand." Instead, I walked away silently, swallowing the sting. I realized then that people could love you and still hurt you. And sometimes it wasn't malicious. It was just life. By 15, the house felt like a battlefield. Even small arguments felt like storms. "Why are you always so quiet?" my little sister asked one evening. I forced a smile. "I'm just thinking." She tilted her head. "Thinking about what?" And for the first time, I almost told her everything. The loneliness, the guilt, the fear. But I didn't. I hugged her instead, whispering, "Nothing. Just thinking." It was around this time that I first tasted rebellion. Skipping classes. Sneaking out. Laughing when I wasn't sure I should. Every small thrill was a relief. A brief freedom, and every time I got caught, the shame reminded me of how heavy life had become. Yet even in darkness, small sparks kept me alive. A teacher who actually noticed when I was struggling. A friend who stayed when everyone else drifted. The quiet moments when the sun hit my face just right. or the wind blew gently through my hair. These little things whispered, "You can survive this. You can still grow. You can still become someone." By 16, I understood a painful truth. Life didn't pause for children who needed rest. People could fail you, betray you, ignore you. Pain would find you anyway. But surviving was a choice. And in the quiet of my room, with my hidden journal and half-written letters, I began to promise myself that I would survive. No one else could save me. I would save myself. By 16, I had learned to carry the world on my shoulders, but the weight had grown unbearable. Every day I felt the pull of expectations, mistakes, and solitude. At school, I felt invisible. The older kids whispered secrets, and I wasn't invited. The teachers praised my diligence, but no one noticed the quiet despair in my eyes. One afternoon, Nandi cornered me under the old mango tree. "Why are you acting like nothing matters?" she asked, frustration in her voice. I stared at the cracked bark. "Nothing does. Nothing?" Her eyes narrowed. "You used to dream about everything. You used to be alive." I laughed bitterly. "Alive? I've been surviving, Nandi. That's all I've done." She shook her head. "Hurt. You're pushing everyone away. You're breaking yourself." Her words hit harder than any scolding. I didn't answer. I walked away, shoulders heavy, stomach twisting. At home, the air felt thicker. Arguments were louder. Silence became sharper. One evening, my uncle stumbled in drunk. "You think you're smart, huh?" he slurred, shaking a finger at my cousin. I froze. My mother tried to calm him, her voice shaking, pleading. I wanted to run, scream, cry, but instead, I went to my room and slammed the door. I started skipping meals sometimes, just to feel control over something. I began writing darker thoughts in my journal, thoughts I couldn't speak aloud. Why do I feel like I'm failing even when I try my hardest? Why do I hurt even when I love? The nights stretched long. I stayed awake, counting the cracks in my ceiling, replaying every small humiliation, every argument, every betrayal. Friendship betrayed me in ways I couldn't forgive. Kwesi, the one who once whispered, "Don't let anyone tell you who you are," laughed at a secret I had trusted them with. I wanted to scream, punch, run. Instead, I sat in silence and let it sink in. Because life had taught me, survival doesn't need loud justice. Sometimes, survival and endurance. My mother noticed my withdrawal. One night, she knocked gently on my door. "I can hear you crying sometimes," she said softly. I turned my face to the wall. "I'm fine." Her sigh was heavy, filled with words she didn't speak. She left, and I felt both comforted and crushed. A reminder that even love sometimes isn't enough. School became unbearable. Every glance felt like judgment. Every laugh in the hallway felt like a mockery of my struggle. I walked alone on rainy days, letting the water mix with my tears. The streets were empty. The puddles reflected the sky, grey and endless. I felt small, insignificant, invisible. One night, after an argument with my mother, I sat on the curb outside our house. "Why does life hurt so much?" I whispered to the empty street. The wind shook the leaves. No answer came. I felt a cold emptiness settle inside my chest. I thought about giving up, disappearing, letting the world swallow me whole. But then, a memory surfaced. The little sister who once asked me why I was always quiet. The teacher who smiled at me when no one else did. The journal under my mattress, where I had poured out my heart, where my voice was safe. I realized that even in the darkest nights, something in me refused to die. The breaking point came quietly, unexpectedly. It was a Saturday. I had skipped school again, hiding in a corner of the park. The rain was coming down in sheets. I was soaked, shivering, and alone. A small girl ran past, laughing with joy. She tripped, fell, and started crying. I froze. Instinctively, I ran to her, helped her up, wiped her tears, and in that small act, something inside me shifted. For the first time in months, I felt purpose beyond my pain. A spark, a tiny flame, a whisper. You are more than your suffering. You can survive this. That night, I returned home. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't have freedom or clarity. But I had hope. Small, fragile, but real. I started talking to my journal differently. Not just about pain. About survival. About wanted to become. I began noticing the small kindnesses again. My little sister's laughter breaking through tension. My mother's tired smile that still tried to hide her exhaustion. A teacher who asked, "Are you okay?" and meant it. Every small spark reminded me that life wasn't entirely cruel. By the end of 16, I realized, rock bottom isn't the end. It's the place where you find the first hint of your own strength, where the storm doesn't break you entirely, where survival becomes a choice, not a chance. And I made that choice. Even when the world felt heavy, even when the nights were long, even when the pain was sharp, I chose to survive. The rain had long stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the soft glow of the city lights. I stood on the balcony, the cool metal railing pressing gently against my palm, and watched the sun dip below the horizon, streaking the sky in muted oranges, purples, and golds. 17 now, I carried the weight of years that felt far too heavy for a child. Every fight I had witnessed, every secret I had kept, every betrayal I had endured, they all lived inside me like shadows stretching longer in the fading light. I thought about Nandi. I thought about Kwezi. I thought about the little girl I had helped fall in the rain. I remembered the nights I had cried silently in my room, listening to the house breathe around me. I remembered the arguments that left my mother's smile cracked, the laughter that echoed in our home but never reached my chest. I remembered the hallway where I first overheard my mother say she felt she was failing us, and the quiet terror I had felt realizing I couldn't fix everything. I survived. I whispered softly to myself, almost afraid to make it real. And yet, saying it aloud made something shift inside. I could feel the tension in my chest begin to loosen, tiny threads of hope weaving through the ache. The turning point had come quietly, like a ripple rather than a storm, helping that little girl in the rain, lifting her from the puddle, brushing off the dirt from her knees. It wasn't heroic. It wasn't dramatic. But it was the first time in months I felt that I could still matter, that I could still be more than my suffering. Memories flared, each one a shadow, each one a whisper. The teacher who noticed when I almost fell apart, gently asking if I was okay. Nandi who had drifted away but returned. Her cautious smile a bridge between my despair and the possibility of connection. The small kindnesses of my family, fleeting but real, reminding me that love existed even when it was buried under exhaustion and silence. The city lights flickered, mirrored in my eyes. The balcony railing felt solid beneath my hands, grounding me. I let my fingers trace the cold metal, feeling it steady me in a way no words could. I began to reflect on the choices I had made, the nights I ran from home, the classes I skipped, the moments of rebellion, each a desperate bid to survive, to feel, to find some control in a life that had never paused for me. And I thought about the mistakes I had made, the friendships I had broken, the lies I had told, the small betrayals, the harsh words, the moments of cruelty. I didn't excuse them. I acknowledged them. And I forgave myself, not fully, not perfectly, but enough to take a breath and move forward. The wind blew softly through my hair. I closed my eyes and listened. The distant laughter of children playing in the streets below, the faint hum of the city, alive and endless. My own steady heartbeat, reminding me that I was here, that I was alive. And in that quiet, I felt a thin thread of peace. Not complete, not resolved, not magical, just enough. I thought about the future. Comma, not the grand, perfect life I once imagined, but a life I could survive in, a life I could slowly build. I could learn to love myself in small ways, writing in my journal when the nights got too heavy, reaching out to the friends who truly mattered, helping others, even in tiny moments, as I had with the girl in the rain. And maybe, just maybe, I could begin to trust that hope didn't betray. I opened my eyes. The sun had disappeared entirely, leaving the city bathed in twilight. The streets glimmered like scattered stars, and I stood there, gripping the balcony railing, feeling the quiet weight of life settle, not too heavy, not unbearable, just a gentle reminder that I had endured, and I could continue. I survived. I whispered again, softer this time, letting the words roll off my tongue like a secret that was finally mine. I didn't need to shout it to the world. I didn't need a fanfare or applause. The quiet was enough. I was still here. I was still learning. I was still becoming. And that, in its thin, fragile way, was everything.